The stars shimmered coldly above Elia's cane as his shuttle limped toward the planet's surface. He had been scouting the outer edges of Voron's space. A routine mission turned wrong the moment a micrometeor storm pierced his shields. The shuttle shuddered with every impact, sparks flying across the control panel. Elias gritted his teeth and forced the craft down, his training guiding his hands with steady precision. He had survived worse, but the isolation in deep space had a way of sharpening fear into something almost tangible. The planet below stretched like a jagged jewel, its mountains dark against the faint glow of the twin moons. It was beautiful in a harsh and dangerous way, and Elias knew that beauty often hid peril. He forced the shuttle to a rough landing near a plateau, its rocky surface scraping against the hull. The engines died with a groan, leaving him in silence, broken only by the faint hum of failing life support systems. Elias exhaled slowly, unbuckling himself from the pilot's seat. Every muscle in his body ached from the crash, but he forced himself to move. Survival came first. He opened the shuttle hatch and stepped onto the uneven ground, the cold biting through his flight suit. The air was thin, sharp, with an unfamiliar metallic tang. He scanned the horizon, knowing the Vorons were likely to patrol this region. The Vorons were legendary for their vigilance, their ruthlessness toward intruders, and the stories of human scouts lost to their wrath were not exaggerations. He had gone too far into unknown space, he realized, but the human drive to explore and understand never allowed for retreat. That drive, that relentless curiosity, had gotten him into trouble countless times. He activated the emergency beacon, but it was too far from any relay satellites to work properly. He was alone, for now. A sudden sound made him freeze. It was subtle at first, a rustle over jagged rocks, but it grew louder, methodical, almost like footsteps. Elias ducked behind a boulder, pressing his back to the cold stone. His eyes scanned the terrain. The shadows between the rocks shifted unnaturally, and then she appeared. T-Rhea stepped into view, her presence commanding even in silence. She was tall, her armor sleek but functional, etched with insignias Elias did not immediately recognize. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto him. She carried a weapon that gleamed under the moons, and every movement spoke of disciplined training. T-Rhea was not just a soldier, she was a hunter, and in that moment Elias was the prey. Instinctively, she raised her weapon. Elias raised his hand slowly, showing no sudden moves, every second stretching endlessly. He had studied the Vorons, knew their patterns, their ways, and yet facing one in person was different. Fear was no longer abstract, it wrapped around his chest like iron. "You are trespassing," her voice was calm but carried authority. Elias could feel the power behind it. "State your purpose." The tattoo there, faded but unmistakable, caught the faint moonlight. It was a simple mark, an emblem of the Human Alliance Scouts, a group long thought extinct or forgotten in Voron memory. The tattoo had saved him before, in theory, but now it was all he had between life and death. T-Rhea's posture shifted imperceptibly. Recognition flickered in her eyes, though it battled with ingrained suspicion. "That mark," she murmured, almost to herself. Elias seized the chance. "I am Elias Kane, trained as an Alliance Scout. My mission is observation, not conquest. I mean no harm." Elias realized he had seconds to convince her, or his life would end before the words could even fully take root. "You are far from home," she said finally, her tone laced with caution. "Far beyond the borders any human should dare to cross." The silence stretched between them. The wind howled across the plateau, carrying with it grit and dust that stung his eyes. Finally, she lowered her weapon slightly. It was not surrender, but it was a pause, a chance. "You will come with me," she said, voice still firm. "The Council will decide your fate." The Voron Council was legendary for swift judgment. Some elders remembered the old human-Voron peace accords, while others were eager to see humans punished for trespassing. There was no guarantee he would survive the journey. They moved together across the plateau. Elias followed her lead, careful not to appear weak or clumsy. Every step was measured, every sound could be heard in the quiet night. T-Rhea's presence was both reassuring and terrifying. She was a constant reminder that the line between life and death was thin, and crossing it required more than courage. It required wit, agility, and sometimes luck. As they traveled, Elias could not help but notice the land around them. The planet was rugged, alive with unseen energy. Strange plants with translucent leaves swayed in the cold wind, and distant mountains jutted like jagged teeth against the dark sky. He took mental notes, knowing that humans had a way of adapting, of learning from even the harshest environments. Survival was not just instinct. It was ingenuity, the ability to see opportunity where others saw danger. The first obstacle came sooner than expected. A narrow pass led between two cliffs, and Ilias spotted movement, predators perhaps native to this world, their eyes glinting like shards of metal. T-Rhea moved swiftly, silent, a shadow among shadows. Ilias followed her lead, imitating her movements, learning how to move without leaving a trace. The predators seemed to sense intruders but hesitated, unnerved by T-Rhea's commanding presence. They passed without incident, but the reminder was clear. Survival on this planet required more than courage. It required respect for the dangers around them. During a brief rest, Ilias dared to speak, his voice low. "I didn't come here for conquest," he said. "I study, I observe, I want to understand, not destroy. Most bring war, not curiosity." Then, without warning, she turned and continued walking, silently signaling him to follow. Ilias obeyed, his mind racing. He was alive for now, but the journey to the council would test everything he knew about survival, diplomacy, and human ingenuity. The night deepened, and strange lights appeared on the horizon. Ilias realized they were not natural. The council's outpost loomed ahead, its architecture alien yet elegant, towers spiraling like jagged crystals. T-Rhea's pace quickened, and he struggled to keep up. The closer they got, the more he could sense the presence of others, watchers, observers, guardians. The council did not tolerate mistakes. Trespassers were rare, and humans rarer still. Finally, they arrived at the outer gates. Massive, carved stone doors stood between them and the inner chambers, guarded by Vorons who sized Ilias up with suspicion and barely concealed hostility. T-Rhea spoke a few words in her language, and the guards parted, allowing passage. Ilias felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on him, every step echoing across the marble floor. Inside, the council chamber stretched vast and imposing. Light from the twin moons filtered through crystalline windows, casting a mosaic of shadows across the floor. The elders were seated in a semicircle, each adorned in ceremonial armor and insignias. Their eyes were sharp, measuring, analyzing. Ilias felt every bit the intruder, the anomaly, the human who had dared to step beyond known space. T-Rhea guided him to the center. "This human claims to be an Alliance scout," she said. "He carries the mark of the old peace accords." Now he had to prove that humans were more than predators or invaders, that they were intelligent, adaptable, and capable of honor. He took a deep breath. "I am Ilias Kane," he said clearly. "I have come not to fight, but to learn, to observe, and to honor the promise of the alliance between our peoples. I ask only for the chance to show you that humans can be allies." He had survived the storm, the landing, the watchful eyes of T-Rhea, and now he would face the trial. And he would rely on what made humans unique: creativity, courage, and the ability to turn the impossible into reality. As he prepared for what was to come, Ilias felt a strange calm settle over him. The journey ahead was dangerous, but for the first time in days, he felt alive not just in body, but in spirit. The stars outside the crystalline windows reminded him of the endless possibilities of human ingenuity, of the endless potential to rise above fear and circumstance. And he would rise. The path to the council's inner chambers wound through jagged canyons and shadowed valleys. Ilias followed T-Rhea carefully, each step measured. The terrain was treacherous, strewn with sharp rocks and deep fissures, yet she moved like a predator born to these lands. He tried to match her pace, his body screaming from the previous crash, but his mind stayed sharp, analyzing every crevice and movement in the shadows. "You are human," T-Rhea said without turning. Her voice carried the weight of curiosity and caution. "I have studied your kind in theory, never in practice. You survive differently than we do. You have only just arrived." Ilias froze. T-Rhea's hand went instinctively to her weapon. He scanned the rocks and saw a group of native predators, their sleek forms blending with the shadows. Their eyes glinted faintly in the moonlight, and the scent of danger hung thick in the air. "They are cautious," T-Rhea said quietly. "But if you make a mistake, they will not hesitate." He crouched low, using a broken rock formation for cover. Then slowly he began to move, studying their patterns. Humans had a way of observing and predicting that Vorons sometimes underestimated. He calculated the timing, noticing the intervals between their movements, and slowly shifted from shadow to shadow. T-Rhea's eyes followed him, a mixture of skepticism and curiosity on her face. "You are careful," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I learned early that impulsive action kills more than enemies ever will," Ilias replied. Sometimes survival is about waiting, watching, learning. Ilias felt a small surge of confidence, tempered immediately by the realization that each step forward was another test, another chance for death. T-Rhea did not speak much after that, but her presence was a constant. It was not comforting, but it was steady, and he needed that steadiness now more than he could explain. As they reached a narrow ridge, Ilias noticed the landscape changing. The jagged rocks gave way to alien flora, towering crystalline plants that glimmered under the twin moons. The ground pulsed faintly, as if the planet itself were alive. He kept his eyes open, aware that the unusual terrain could hide dangers beyond predators, unstable ground, hidden fissures, or worse. T-Rhea paused, scanning the horizon. "We are close," she said. "The Council's outpost lies beyond that valley, but the way is not simple. You will need more than courage to reach it intact." He kept a mental map of their path, noting landmarks, calculating angles, and thinking through contingencies. Humans had survived for centuries not because they were the strongest, but because they could think, improvise, and turn danger into opportunity. Night deepened, and the valley below opened before them. A river of silver liquid snaked between rocks, reflecting the moonlight. The surface seemed smooth, but Ilias could sense the current was strong beneath. T-Rhea approached first, testing the waters with a slender pole. Ilias hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, trusting his instincts and human experience. With careful, measured steps, he crossed, keeping his weight balanced and his movements silent. The water was cold, biting at his skin despite the protective suit. Halfway across, he heard it, a rumble deep and resonant. Rocks shifted above the valley and dust fell in tiny cascades. T-Rhea tensed beside him. "Move," she said simply. Ilias quickened his pace, calculating the safest path as chunks of rock fell around them. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed clear. Panic would have been fatal. He adjusted his steps, avoiding weak spots, and reached solid ground. T-Rhea's gaze lingered on him, a subtle acknowledgement passing between them. Ilias felt a small surge of pride, not for himself, but for the human capacity to survive against odds that would have crushed others. The Council outpost came into view, larger and more imposing than Ilias had imagined. Its towers spiraled skyward, crystalline surfaces catching the faint moonlight. Guards moved along the walls, watching them approach. He felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on him, each one assessing, judging, questioning. As they entered the outer gate, T-Rhea spoke to the guards briefly in her language. Ilias felt their scrutiny like a physical force. They were wary, suspicious, and ready to strike at the slightest provocation. He kept his hands visible and his steps careful, following T-Rhea's lead. Inside the gate, a courtyard stretched wide. Crystalline columns glimmered faintly, and strange devices hovered silently, their purpose unclear. Ilias noticed Voran trainees practicing combat drills, their movements precise and lethal. His gaze shifted to T-Rhea, who moved among them effortlessly, a master of her environment. "She is impressive," he thought, recalling the stories of Voran warriors. But he also remembered his own strengths. Humans adapted, humans observed, and humans could improvise in ways others did not anticipate. That adaptability had saved him countless times before, and he would rely on it now. They reached the council chamber, a vast room filled with elders seated in semicircles. Their eyes were sharp, cold, and calculating. Some recognized the tattoo on Ilias' forearm, while others frowned, their suspicion clear. Ilias felt the tension, the weight of every decision made by humans and Vorans over decades pressing down upon him. T-Rhea guided him to the center. "This human claims to be an Alliance scout," she said. "He carries the mark of the old peace accords." An elder spoke, voice echoing in the chamber. "Humans are rare, few venture this far. The mark he bears carries history, but history is not proof of intent. Actions must speak. I ask only for the chance to show you that humans can be trusted, that we can honor the promises made long ago, and that we can contribute, not destroy." He had faced physical challenges before, but this was different. It was not just survival, it was diplomacy, adaptability, and ingenuity. He had to show that humans were more than unpredictable, reckless creatures. They could think, plan, and act with honor. The elder continued. "The trial begins at dawn. You will navigate a series of challenges designed to measure your ability to survive, adapt, and protect life, both your own and others. Succeed, and you may earn a place in our consideration. Fail, and the consequences are severe." Humans thrived under challenge, and he had never known a situation in which the impossible had stopped him. T-Rhea's eyes met his briefly. There was respect there, subtle but unmistakable. She had seen him navigate the valley, the predators, and the river with skill and clarity. Perhaps she recognized that human ingenuity was more than rumor or legend. It was real, and it could make a difference. Night passed with little rest. Elias lay awake on the cold, crystalline floor, planning, visualizing the trial ahead. He considered every tool at his disposal: his mind, his instincts, his knowledge of survival, and the unpredictable creativity humans often displayed in the face of danger. Every challenge the council might present would require him to think, adapt, and act faster than anyone expected. By dawn, he was ready, not just physically, but mentally. He rose, feeling the weight of history, culture, and expectation on his shoulders. Humans had always been underestimated. They had always been outsiders in a galaxy filled with older, larger, and more powerful species. But underestimating humans had also always been a mistake. As he stepped toward the trial grounds, flanked by T-Rhea, Elias felt the pulse of the planet beneath his feet, the eyes of the council upon him, and the potential for something greater than survival in his chest. The trial would be difficult, dangerous, and unpredictable. But he was human, and humans had a way of turning impossibility into opportunity. And this time, he would not merely survive. He would prove that humans could rise above fear, above suspicion, and above every expectation, leaving a mark that no alien, no matter how powerful, could ignore. The sun had barely risen over the jagged peaks when Elias Kane stepped into the trial grounds. The area was vast, bordered by towering crystalline spires that reflected the soft light of dawn. It was silent but not empty. Figures moved in the shadows, Voran warriors, their eyes sharp, their postures perfect, observing every detail of his arrival. Elias knew that every movement would be judged, every hesitation noticed. He squared his shoulders and followed T-Rhea's lead, her presence a constant reminder of the discipline he would need to match. The council elders awaited them in a raised platform at the center of the trial grounds. Their expressions were unreadable, but the weight of expectation pressed heavily on Elias. This was not just a test of strength, it was a test of intellect, strategy, and character. The mark on his forearm, the tattoo of the old Human Alliance scouts, had earned him a place here, but it would not save him now. Survival would require every ounce of his human ingenuity. "You may begin," the senior elder said, voice carrying across the crystalline expanse. "Your trial will measure your mind, your skill, and your loyalty. Fail in any, and your journey ends here." Most would attempt to charge through, relying on speed or strength. Elias knew better. He stepped forward slowly, observing the reflections in the crystals, noting the angles of sunlight, the patterns of shadows. Humans were not always the fastest, but they were clever. He memorized the sequence of shifting walls, testing his steps with small, deliberate movements. One misstep could trigger a trap, but patience gave him an advantage. Halfway through the maze, a faint click echoed under his boot. A section of the floor slid slightly, revealing a hidden pit below. Elias froze, studying the mechanism. The traps were designed to punish haste, to reward calculation. Using a small shard of crystal from the ground, he triggered the mechanism carefully, revealing a safe path across. The maze seemed to resist him, shifting unpredictably, but he adapted, marking subtle cues on the walls with a piece of chalk he had taken from his supplies. Step by step, he advanced, keeping his mind alert, his body cautious. Meanwhile, T-Rhea watched silently from above, her arms crossed. She noticed how he paused before each step, how he studied the environment, and how he treated the traps not as threats to fear, but as puzzles to solve. The faintest hint of respect crossed her face. Humans often relied on instinct, but Elias relied on strategy, and strategy was powerful. When he finally emerged from the maze, a new challenge awaited. A series of hovering platforms floated above a deep chasm. The platforms shifted unpredictably, forcing the contestant to time their movements with precision. A miscalculation would mean falling into the chasm below, where survival was impossible. Elias studied the platforms for a moment, observing the rhythm of their movement. Then he began to leap, using his weight to adjust the balance of the first platform, a trick humans had learned in centuries of improvising with their environment. Halfway across, one platform tilted dangerously. Elias adjusted his stance, using a piece of debris as a counterweight, a makeshift tool that the Vorans had not anticipated. He leapt to the next platform with careful precision, landing just as the last tilted violently. T-Rhea's eyes widened slightly. She had not expected a human to interact with the environment so creatively. Humans often survived by thinking, adapting, and improvising in ways that other species dismissed. Once across the chasm, the final test of this first stage presented itself. A Voran trainee was in danger. The trainee had triggered a trap and was dangling from a ledge above a pit. Most candidates might have ignored the danger, focusing on speed and efficiency. Elias did not hesitate. He assessed the situation quickly, his human instinct for empathy and action guiding him, and found a solution. He used a long pole he had carried for balance across the platforms, maneuvering it carefully to reach the trainee. "Grab my hand," he shouted, his voice steady. The young Voran hesitated for a moment, then took it. Elias pulled with all his strength, calculating the leverage and force needed to prevent both of them from falling. Slowly, steadily, he drew the trainee to safety. The council elders murmured among themselves, a mixture of surprise and approval in their expressions. Most humans would have prioritized speed, their own survival, or even ignored the trainee entirely. But Elias had done what humans were sometimes underestimated for. He had considered the value of life, both his own and others, and acted with courage and intelligence. When he reached solid ground, he faced the final challenge of this first trial, a puzzle of lights and symbols, a complex arrangement requiring both logic and intuition. The symbols seemed alien, but humans had a way of recognizing patterns, seeing connections where others saw chaos. Elias examined the symbols, moving pieces carefully, testing sequences, and noticing subtle hints left in the design. Each time he made a small adjustment, the system responded, confirming his approach. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Sweat ran down his face and his muscles ached, but Elias pressed on. His mind was alive, sharp, and determined. Finally, with a final placement of the last piece, the puzzle clicked into alignment. A low hum resonated through the chamber, and a crystalline door slid open. The trial was complete. The council rose, their eyes fixed on him. T-Rhea stepped forward, her expression unreadable, but her posture betrayed a small measure of pride. "You have completed the first stage," she said. "Your ingenuity and courage are noteworthy." But the elders were not finished. They would want to test his judgment, his character, and his strategic thinking in scenarios that mirrored the complexity of the galaxy itself. As he prepared for the next stage, he realized that humans had a way of thriving in uncertainty. Their history was filled with moments where they faced overwhelming odds and survived, not because of strength alone, but because of creativity, adaptability, and determination. He carried that legacy within him now, the echo of countless human choices that had turned failure into opportunity. The next trial took place in a simulated combat arena. Elias faced opponents who were not enemies, but challenges designed to test his ability to strategize under pressure. They were trained warriors, each move precise and lethal if not anticipated. He assessed their movements, noting patterns, weaknesses, and the environment around him. Every obstacle became a tool, every moment of hesitation on their part an opportunity for action. He moved with human ingenuity, using the terrain to his advantage, improvising with tools and resources around him, and coordinating actions in ways the artificial opponents did not expect. Step by step, he outmaneuvered each challenge, earning subtle nods of acknowledgement from T-Rhea, who observed with a growing sense of respect. The final test of the day was a moral challenge. He was presented with a scenario where two lives hung in the balance, a choice where any decision would have consequences. Elias considered the variables carefully, drawing on human experience and intuition. He realized that every action carried weight, that courage was not just physical, and that leadership required empathy. He made his decisions swiftly but thoughtfully, demonstrating the balance of intellect and heart. The elders deliberated as he waited, his heart steady despite the tension. Finally, the senior elder spoke. "You have completed the first series of trials. Your actions reflect qualities we respect: ingenuity, courage, and the capacity to value life beyond self-interest. Few humans would have succeeded as you have." The trial had revealed much about him, and perhaps about humanity itself, but the council's judgment was far from complete. More challenges awaited, and each would demand the combination of courage, intelligence, and adaptability that humans had always excelled at. As he left the arena for the evening, he reflected on the journey so far. Humans had survived not because they were the strongest, but because they could think, adapt, and persevere. That capacity had carried him through the maze, the chasm, the puzzle, the simulated combat, and the moral dilemma. It had earned him recognition and respect in a society that had long doubted humanity's place among the stars, and he knew that the trials ahead would demand even more. But Elias Kane was ready. He was human, and humans had a way of turning impossible odds into opportunities. As the twin moons rose over the trial grounds, casting silver light across the crystalline spires, Elias felt a quiet determination settle in him. The journey was far from over, but the first steps had been taken. And for the first time, he sensed that humans could not only survive among the Vorons, they could leave a mark that could not be ignored. The sun hung low over the crystalline towers of the council outpost, casting long shadows across the trial grounds. Elias Kane had completed the first series of tests, but he knew the next stages would challenge him in ways far beyond physical skill. Tirea walked beside him as they made their way toward a narrow path leading out of the arena. Her armor gleamed faintly, catching the light in a way that made her seem almost otherworldly. Elias felt a mix of admiration and tension. He knew she had seen his human ingenuity in the trials, but the true test of trust had yet to come. "Tomorrow you will face more than the Council's challenges," Tirea said quietly, her eyes scanning the jagged horizon. "There are factions among us who do not welcome your kind. Some will attempt to prevent you from completing the trial, even at the cost of violence." He had survived ambushes and traps before, but an attack within the Council's own domain would test both his strategic thinking and adaptability. Humans were good at improvisation, at seeing opportunity where others saw danger, and he intended to use every skill at his disposal. The night was cold as they approached the outer gate. The guards at the post were alert, but Elias sensed something in the air, a subtle tension that suggested not all was as it seemed. He felt the weight of eyes watching him from the shadows, and his instincts hummed with the knowledge that trouble was near. They had nearly reached a sheltered courtyard when a sudden, sharp noise shattered the quiet. From the darkness, figures leaped forward, rogue Vorons, weapons drawn, their eyes filled with hostility. Elias reacted instantly, dropping low and scanning the attackers. The human's advantage was their ability to improvise. His advantage was his mind, quick to assess, quick to act. Tirea engaged immediately, moving with precision and lethal efficiency. Her strikes were controlled, aimed to disable rather than kill, but the rogue warriors pressed on relentlessly. Elias had no weapon but his environment and his wits. He spotted a series of broken pillars and rocks, and using them as leverage, he created barriers and traps, funneling the attackers into positions where their momentum worked against them. A vicious charge came from the left, and Elias dodged at the last moment, using a fallen beam to knock the attacker off balance. The Voron hit the ground hard but recovered quickly. Elias jumped onto a nearby ledge, using height to his advantage, and hurled a large shard of crystal, forcing two attackers to scatter. He was moving fast, thinking faster, adjusting with every breath, every step. Tirea glanced at him mid-battle, a faint look of astonishment crossing her face. Humans often relied on sheer strength or cunning alone, but Elias combined both, using strategy and agility, improvisation and observation. Each move displayed the unpredictable brilliance of humanity, a quality many Vorons underestimated. The fight escalated, and Elias realized the attackers were coordinated, expecting him to panic or retreat. Instead, he turned the battlefield into a series of opportunities. Using the terrain, he guided the attackers into narrow corridors where Tirea could strike efficiently, cutting off escape routes and isolating them one by one. The rogue Vorons had strength and discipline, but Elias had something rarer in their eyes: adaptability. At one point, a rogue aimed to flank Tirea from behind. Elias intercepted, using a long metal rod as a lever to knock the attacker off balance. Tirea moved swiftly, neutralizing the threat before it could harm either of them. The battle was intense, but Elias' human instinct for rapid problem-solving turned what could have been chaos into control. Finally, the last rogue Voron attempted a desperate charge. Elias feigned a step forward, drawing him into a narrow crevice. As the attacker lunged, Elias pivoted, using the walls to redirect the attacker's force, sending him crashing harmlessly into a barrier. The rogue struggled and Tirea moved in, disarming him completely. The courtyard fell silent. Elias stood amidst the shattered remnants of the fight, breathing heavily but unbowed. Tirea approached, her armor scratched, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then softly she said, "You are unlike any human I expected. You adapt, you think, and you fight not recklessly but effectively. I underestimated you. It's not just instinct, it's thinking." The rogue attackers had been restrained, but the council would want answers. Elias knew that this display of human ingenuity and courage had shifted the perception of him in T-Rea's eyes and, potentially, among the council elders. They arrived at a secluded chamber, where the young Voran trainees were tending to minor wounds and securing the rogue attackers. Elias watched quietly, noting the efficiency and discipline of the Vorans, yet also observing how his human adaptability had influenced the course of events. His presence, his actions, had turned a potential disaster into an example of strategic problem-solving. T-Rea spoke quietly, almost to herself. "You are not reckless. You are calculated. Perhaps humans have more to offer than I believed." Every decision, every move he made had reinforced the notion that humans could be more than outsiders. They could be partners, even allies, in the eyes of a species that valued discipline and intelligence. The council convened shortly afterward. The elders' expressions were measured, their eyes probing, but Elias sensed curiosity alongside skepticism. He stood before them not as a human trespasser, but as a being who had demonstrated capability, ingenuity, and respect for life. His actions during the ambush spoke louder than any words could. The senior elder regarded him silently for a moment, then spoke. "Your performance demonstrates qualities unexpected in a human. You act with strategy, value life, and adapt in the face of unpredictability. These are qualities we honor." Now in front of the council, he would continue to demonstrate exactly why humanity could survive, thrive, and even lead in situations where others might fail. The next challenge would involve collaboration with T-Rea herself, a test not just of survival, but of human diplomacy, intuition, and problem-solving in concert with a Voran warrior. Together, they would face a series of obstacles designed to push trust, strategy, and ingenuity to their limits. Elias understood the significance. This was more than a trial. It was a chance to forge a bridge between species. The success of humanity in this scenario would not just be measured by survival, but by the ability to earn respect, to demonstrate the unique qualities that humans brought to the galaxy. Quick thinking, innovation, and the courage to act decisively when others hesitated. As they prepared for the next stage, Elias and T-Rea moved through the corridors of the outpost, their steps synchronized, their awareness heightened. They were a team now, in practice if not in trust, and each moment of collaboration would test not only skill but character. Elias reflected briefly on the human advantage, the ability to improvise, to think creatively, to see solutions others could not. The ambush had been the first real test of this principle outside controlled trials, and he had survived. But the real test lay ahead, navigating the political, tactical, and moral challenges the Council would present, alongside T-Rea, as a demonstration that humans were more than what the galaxy assumed. The sun rose higher, casting brilliant light across the crystalline spires. Shadows fell into sharp relief, highlighting every crack, every crevice, every challenge yet to come. Elias felt a calm determination settle within him. He had proven adaptability, courage, and intelligence in battle. He had demonstrated that humans could think, improvise, and act decisively. And now, he would prove that they could also lead, collaborate, and earn the trust of one of the galaxy's most disciplined and formidable species. He glanced at T-Rea, who moved beside him with the grace of a predator, yet now with an unmistakable measure of respect. The bond between them was fragile, built on mutual recognition of skill and intellect, but it existed. And in the trials to come, it would be the bridge upon which trust and the possibility of alliance would walk. Elias Kane was far from finished. The ambush had tested him, but it had also shown the strength of human ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. The next challenges would demand even more, but he was ready. He was human, and humans had a way of thriving against impossible odds. And this time, the galaxy would notice. The sun had begun its slow climb over the crystalline spires, bathing the council grounds in pale gold. Elias Kane stood beside T-Rea at the threshold of the final challenge. The air was tense, heavy with expectation. The council had watched his every move, analyzed his every decision, and judged not only his skill but his character, ingenuity, and capacity to act under pressure. This last trial would decide his fate, and humanity's standing in a galaxy that rarely trusted outsiders. T-Rea's expression was unreadable, but Elias could sense the faintest trace of respect. She had seen him survive the ambush, navigate the labyrinth, and solve the puzzles that had baffled others. Now they would face the culmination of the trial together, a collaborative test of intellect, strategy, and trust. The challenge was laid out before them, a series of interconnected rooms, each with shifting floors, hidden traps, and complex mechanisms. At the center of each room was a control panel linked to the next door. Only by solving the puzzles and coordinating their actions could they advance. Time was limited, and failure could mean imprisonment, or worse. Elias glanced at T-Rhea. "We'll need to coordinate closely. Communication is key." A wrong step could activate spikes or drop them into a deep pit. Elias paused, observing the patterns. T-Rhea moved instinctively, stepping with precision, while he analyzed, calculated, and anticipated the floor's movement. Together, they synchronized their steps, combining her speed and reflexes with his strategic mind. The control panel at the center of the room flashed with alien symbols. T-Rhea glanced at him. "What do you see?" "Impressive," T-Rhea admitted, her tone softening. "Your mind, it sees patterns differently than mine." They had to act quickly, yet carefully. Elias observed the positions, calculating the weight and balance of each lever. T-Rhea moved to test one, and a trap activated, sending a harmless but disorienting flash of light across the room. "Not that one," Elias said calmly. "Try the lever 2 steps to your right. The mechanism is designed to mislead, but it follows a predictable pattern. Watch the balance. Observation and patience are powerful tools." T-Rhea acted instinctively, moving to adjust mirrors, while Elias calculated angles and timing. Step by step, beam by beam, they aligned the lights, the mechanisms clicking into place. The room responded, and the final door slid open. Their teamwork had passed the test, showcasing the combination of human ingenuity and Voran precision. Beyond the door lay the moral challenge, the final stage of the trial. Inside, they encountered simulated scenarios designed to test decision-making under pressure, life-or-death situations where they had to choose who to save, which path to take, and how to prioritize limited resources. Elias took a deep breath. Humans had survived for millennia by thinking critically, balancing instinct with morality, and acting decisively. He and T-Rhea moved through the scenarios, communicating efficiently, making split-second decisions that saved simulated lives while minimizing risk. Their coordination highlighted the unique qualities of both species, the Voran's strength and instinct, and humanity's creativity and adaptability. The final scenario presented the ultimate test. 2 individuals were trapped in separate locations, each in imminent danger. The simulation allowed only one of them to be saved if they acted alone. Elias assessed the environment carefully, noting weak walls, leverage points, and tools in the room. He realized that by combining their efforts and thinking creatively, they could save both. "T-Rhea, follow my lead," he said. "We can use the structural beams and pulleys to reach both simultaneously." Together, they executed the plan, moving quickly yet precisely. The first individual was rescued, then the second. The council's simulation acknowledged their success with a soft chime, and the room opened to reveal the final chamber. The council elders were waiting, their expressions unreadable but attentive. Elias and T-Rhea stepped forward. Silence filled the chamber. Then the senior elder spoke, voice calm but commanding. "You have completed the trials. Your actions demonstrate qualities rare in both humans and Vorans: intelligence, adaptability, courage, and respect for life. You have proven that humans are capable of honor, ingenuity, and alliance." This was more than personal success. It was a testament to humanity itself, showing that they could rise above prejudice and expectation. Another elder, younger and more skeptical, spoke. "Your decisions were unconventional, yet effective. You have earned not only survival but recognition. The mark you bear is no longer just a symbol. It is proof that humans can be trusted partners." Trust among the Vorans was hard-won, and he had earned it through skill, intelligence, and empathy. The senior elder continued. "Humanity is now recognized in our domain. You may return to your people, carrying with you the understanding that cooperation and mutual respect can bridge species. You have shown that humans can rise to challenges that others thought insurmountable." Yet in every trial, every challenge, every decision, Elias had demonstrated what humanity had always known, that adaptability, creativity, courage, and empathy could overcome even the most daunting odds. T-Rhea regarded him silently, then spoke. "The galaxy may doubt humans, but today you have proven that we were wrong to underestimate you. The tattoo you bear is not just a mark of the past, it is a symbol of what humanity can achieve. The galaxy would be wise to recognize this." Outside, the sun climbed higher, casting brilliant light over the crystalline towers. T-Rhea walked beside him, her expression relaxed now, a rare smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "You are remarkable," she said, "not just for a human, but for any being. That is what matters." The recognition he had earned was not just personal. It was a step toward a broader understanding, a proof that humans could rise to challenges, form alliances, and inspire respect even among the most disciplined warriors. The two of them walked back to the shuttle that would take Elias to human space. As they traveled across the rocky terrain, Elias reflected on what had occurred. Every decision, every improvisation, every moment of courage had reinforced a central truth. Humans were capable of extraordinary things, not because they were the strongest, but because they could think, adapt, and act with creativity and purpose. T-Rhea broke the silence. "When you return to your people, what will you tell them?" "That humans are more than they think. That courage, intelligence, and ingenuity matter. That we can rise above fear, suspicion, and expectation. And that we can earn trust even from those who doubt us. The galaxy may doubt you, but you have shown what humans can do." The trials had tested him, but they had also opened a door for humanity, a door that could lead to cooperation, understanding, and recognition across the stars. As the shuttle lifted off, Elias Kane allowed himself a final thought. Humans were resilient, resourceful, and capable of extraordinary achievements. And now, the galaxy would know it too. For the first time in a long while, Elias felt a quiet certainty settle over him. The trials were over, but the journey of humanity was just beginning, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again.